Welcome back to part number 2 of SPAMBO's Guide to Imperator Rome. This one, I made a short list of items here. I'm going to start with war. And in order to succeed in Imperator Rome, you'll want to war with your neighbors. Of course, it's a classical era game, and there was a lot of that went on. In Imperator, like say relative to EU4, which is perhaps its most similar game in Paradox, the Imperator matrix is much more freewheeling and open. You can attack anyone, anywhere, anyhow, for as long as you can, or as long as you please, just so long as you have the manpower and can maintain the stability to do it. Whereas in EU4, there are groupings of various sorts of cultures or religions that will become highly agitated and form coalitions against you if they perceive you as like a world conquest threat or a threat to their very existence. Whereas Imperator, you just do as you please, how you please, for as long as you please, or as long as you can. Along those lines, the easy button for that as long as you can thing is this religious advance here. It's called Militant Epicureanism. You can destroy temples for 10 stability. I usually don't take it until the end game. So depending on when you take Militant Epicureanism, your game will get much easier at that point. You can essentially raise or desecrate any holy site and get 10 stability for your trouble. Presently, I don't have many. The wider you get, the more holy sites you will receive. In fact, I don't have any under my control at present. That will change relatively shortly. You really wouldn't want to burn through all of these desecrations early on anyway, which is another reason why I save it until the end. Okay, so how are you going to expand in the early game if you only have your primary culture to call up levies with? The answer is mercs. We have a fair income. In fact, it's higher than fair relative to our ability and need. So what I have is I hired these highly competent mercs with a 15 leader. They start with 9 heavy infantry and 9 archers and a supply train. They were able to get a great deal of work done here and cost me 0 manpower. The rest of these levies that I called up essentially sort of wander around and put out fires, but this mercenary stack here with the 15 marshal did most of the heavy lifting. You can have your merc assault forts if needed, but generally you don't want to do that, as you want to keep them in fighting shape, because you'll note I'm a very small power in Epirus, and I conquered quite a few tribes here. This is a rinse-repeat sort of thing. As you'll note, we only have 1 merc because it's fairly early in the game. Let's load another save. A bit of time has passed and our income is spiked. We're keeping some money in the bank, and if I wanted to hire mercenaries, I could. There are some mercs here. He's beaten and battered. He needs to recover his manpower and number before I could hire him again. Luckily, there are other mercs about. There's another 15 here with the 9931. You can see them generally on the map. They're the ones that are quite close. Of course, this is a chariots and will not be augmented by our various traditions that we may or may not have. So I like a heavy infantry, of course, better than chariots as a Greek power. In order to find other mercs that are not within your territory proper, like there's a fat mark here in Pella that's not on the board here, you'll want to go to the military tab, the mercenary tab, pardon me, and it'll start with the closest ones to your capital, which is here. There's another merc here in Pella. Boom, I just click on this eye and go right here to Pella. That's an 1872, large, and it's going to cost no slight amount of money per turn, 18.62. Luckily, we have it because we've expanded into these tribal territories and are able to extract taxes and sell the goods from said tribal territories to other tribes, nations, etc. I don't know really where they go. If you're curious as to where your exports go, you could click on this trade overview tab, go to exports, and you could sort by trade good or whatnot, and just sort of go down and you'll find out where your exports are headed here. So again, you'll know we've done quite a bit of expanding, but we still only have the singular integrated culture, our primary culture here. And in theory, our legion count is quite low. It's 6 of 6. We've maxed it out. It's right here. This is our mighty legion. And our levy is a 0. So all of this got done essentially with mercs and money. There are quite a few shades or variations on a theme relative to warring. If I had to summarize it, you would want to go after smaller powers with overawing force and get it done very quickly with as many mercs as possible. If you go after a larger power, say like Macedon or Egypt, Rome, they'll probably have multiple level forts in their capital and or other areas. You can find out the forts, where the forts are with the fort map mode or fortifications map mode. There's one in Pella, his capital he has a level 1 fort only at present. If we pivot over to Rome, there's a level 2 fortification. It's fairly early in the game, so the forts are not going to be outrageously high. The longer the game goes, they'll build multiple levels of forts. You can build as many forts in an area as you have capacity in the cities, but there's a fortifications maximum per province. I'm not going to go into it, as you don't want to build them in the first place, and whatever the AI has is what the AI has, but you don't ever want to build forts. I mean, some people do in certain cases if you're playing a tallish game, but this how-to is about moderately wide to wide play. Okay, so we wouldn't want to go after Macedon because it's not a smaller power, but these smaller tribes here, let's say that we wanted to war with this tribe. We have a claim there. We're going to attack this tribe, and we want to get these tribes off the books as quickly as possible and then peace out. Number one, we don't want to do it with our own levies or legions because it will cost us manpower. And the lower your manpower relative to your neighbors, the more likely they are to pounce and attack you. Luckily, in this game, I'm allied with Rome, or he would have attacked us long ago. Macedon is not feeling particularly well. In fact, we're going to attack him soon, but that's not relevant to the grander scheme of things. So, use mercs, attack these tribes, use your levies and legion to sort of hold down your own territory and or chase down the tribal levies that pop up. Drop these forts via assaulting them and or just sort of sieging them down, although mercs will not have siege engineers. And then get out and get done. You'll note here our wartime aggressive expansion has no bonus for being at peace. Right down there at the bottom there's an X. There is no inherent decay for our aggressive expansion as we are currently the aggressors in a war. The Romans called us to arms against the Carthaginians, so we are technically the aggressors in that war. If we were at peace, we would burn, I believe it's 0.20 of our total aggressive expansion per month. The more the aggressive expansion, or the higher it is, the more you'll burn by being at peace. You'll note we burn quite a bit with a tyranny as well, a 0.17 tick down per month due to our 42.81 tyranny. How did I acquire all this tyranny, and what does it do for you? How to acquire tyranny exactly is in the wiki in great detail. The most useful way to do it is to choose the third option down on any peace settlement, imprison their leaders. Then you can go here to the character list and choose the imprisoned and sell them off all into slavery. You'll get 8, 9, or 10 gold per character, and these small tribes this small tribe will have the same number of characters that you can imprison, at least by my best reckoning, as this one. You can make quite a tidy sum of money, and in fact I did. The whole thing funded the mercs that I was able to hire until we were finally able to get over the hurdle to where we make a decent amount of money and can fund it ourselves. When you sell one of these characters that you capture off into slavery, it gives you a certain amount of tyranny. I'm not exactly sure, but just sell them off, and it's not only gets you the money to fund your war machine, but it will get you the tyranny to burn off your aggressive expansion as well. That's good for early game. If you're in the mid game and you have like this decent income, selling off all those characters, pressing a button for another character and another character and another character is not really useful. So what you get to maybe this size or a little bit larger, I would switch over to the second one where you get minus 0.50 aggressive expansion. If you need to dredge up tyranny after at some point, I'll usually, it's an easy way to do it here. You can just go down the list here. This fellow is popular as a primary heir. This great family member here has some degree of popularity. We can just go down here, and first of all, if you see the support for heir, you'll click that button. You can get 1, and then you can follow up with a good smear. This is another good way to do it. All these guys support. That's actionable. Some of them are not even loyal enough to have the support for heir. Let's see if this one we can do it. We'll get another 1 tyranny, etc. Rinse, repeat. So what will tyranny do for you? It's going to lower the threshold for civil war, lower the loyalty of characters, so these compound with one another to one degree or the next. The slave output gets juiced, which is no slight. It's about 1/3 of our income. Commerce makes up the most of it, you'll note there. 11 for taxes, and commerce is 24. But it's something. Imprison and execute costs is generally not particularly relevant. I wouldn't worry about it. And then it's coming down due to various matters, which are mostly RNG based. But you'll really want to run, say, a 40 or thereabouts tyranny. You shouldn't run into a lot of trouble with it if you use a singular culture here. You know these pops are 48% happy. And the characters, if we go here to the character list, loyalties, some of these characters are not particularly loyal, but They're also not great family people, so they're not going to cause a civil war or any trouble. So here is the most disloyal character who is also in a great family. Theoretically, you should probably just ignore anyone who's not in a great family relative to loyalty. You can click on this button here, and then we'll get a better look at exactly how loyal or not loyal our great families are. This one has minus 15% due to her traits. This researcher here is head of a great family, surely, due to his power base. This one is a pretender. Legate, you shouldn't really have pretenders on legates. Obviously, nothing happened, as this is a from 484. Maybe I swapped the legate out, or maybe nothing really happened. And then we continue upward on our loyalty, and we realize that there's very little problem in our empire, or in our kingdom. The reason being a couple of different things. Number one is all of our characters in the great families theoretically are, or at least most of them, are going to be of our primary culture. So they will get the bonus as detailed here, the 5.4%. This one, 5.4%. They all still should be theoretically primary culture. If you go down here, yeah, they mostly are. If I were to integrate more cultures, like say I wanted to integrate Dalmatian or Qatari, this would come down to 44% for each new culture that I integrated, and this Dalmatian would come up to 44%. If I were to integrate Qatari and Dalmatian, this would come down to 40, that would rise to 40, and that would rise to 40 as well. The problem is the actual doing of it and the relevance of it. Yeah, the doing of it here costs me 5 PI, not much. This is a monthly stability tick. You note we have a minus 0.18 presently. That would add 0.20 to it, to a 0.38 total, and then our culture happiness, as previously detailed, would come down by 4% for each integrated culture. I've conquered all of this with mercs, as with previously detailed, and have little need of more. I could get, again, conquer more quickly if I were to raise levies from these various cultures. Macedonian comes to mind, but as detailed in the previous how-to in part 1, I really don't want to integrate other cultures, especially Macedonian, because then you end up with primary culture pops essentially everywhere that you conquer. There's a lot of Macedonians about here, and they just end up in the fields, and you'll inevitably see a drop in your research rate. You don't believe me? Try it. It'll drop. Would more integrated cultures make a difference here? Character culture happiness is the only real bonus that we're getting here, which essentially offsets this tyranny. If I were to integrate, say, 4 cultures, it would drop by maybe a third, so I would lose like 1.7 or something from this 5.4 character culture happiness, and this would drop to from 40 to 38, which is not a big deal. Right up until you get to really close thresholds. For instance, if I were to run a higher tyranny, say 90, for instance, let's open up a save with a really high tyranny. Here's a save from 636 with 94 tyranny. You'll note that the threshold for civil war is minus 11.3%, and the loyalty of characters is minus 11.3 as well. So if we open this up again and check, we'll note they're actually more loyal now with the higher tyranny. And the reason is the technologies that we've unearthed. For instance, I'm also married into the great family, but this one is not. This one is married, this is not. You note I have various technologies: loyalty to state, approved familia, patrocinium, etc. And the culture of happiness is 9.84 in this case, which is considerably higher than the 5.4 we just looked at. This is 52%. And there are various other bonuses that I have unearthed here. Apollo, and then I have a holy site to Apollo, great power, FUG, open religion, etc. And then here you see the Civil War. You'll note from the previous, in the previous iteration, we'll go back and look at that save again. Here with the high tyranny, if at least 10.69% of the total power base are disloyal, that's relatively low. And that's where temporary office comes and makes a huge difference in your ability to avoid civil wars. Essentially, this would be 5.69% without that 5% from temporary office. Most of this trouble is coming from a great power as well as a tyranny there, which is quite high. The reason I'm running the high tyranny is we get a national slave output here of 47%, which is nice, but mostly that it burns down 0.37 aggressive expansion per month. So I opened up the 484 save again, and we'll note here that the Civil War threshold is better, but the loyalties are worse, in that, or the same as they were just previously mentioned, because we have not unearthed all of those innovations, which we may as well look over presently. Let's jump in and take a quick look at the loyalty bonus innovations. There's a quick +2 on the right side of the Tory tree here. You jump down to approved familia +4, And right down here is another +2. So that's a +8 loyalty of characters. There are probably others about that I usually don't visit. There are also national ideas that you can enact, such as this one, loyalty of characters +5. You need a certain technology threshold. It's greater than or equal to 8 here as detailed, and we presently only have level 4. But that one is nice as well. That'll give you a 13, a positive modifier to all of your character loyalties. The 8 from those innovations I just mentioned here, here, and here, as well as that +5, tend to keep the civil wars away and your characters more happier, which keep your office holders happier, which will give you more political influence as well. Let's take a quick look at some technologies you're going to need before we get back to the warring theme. You know, sort of jumping around here. As long as I'm here, this is the oratory tree. We've taken this for bookbinding in the Grand Theater. After you've proceeded down and reached the scribe, and you have approximately a 200% research efficiency, which I believe we're going to reach fairly quickly, as sometime in the early 500s. You'll want to proceed down this path here next and build this wonder. A little break or sidetrack from warring here, just sort of in the flow of things. You'll get the loyalty of characters +2 here to all your characters, primary or otherwise. And then you'll go here for a monthly tyranny, which is by and large irrelevant. This is nice, 10% political influence. You go down here, diplo range, whatever, diplo relations, whatever. And then here we get access to the government traditions great wonder, which is very important. This would be the 4th path you'd want to take after reaching. The first path would be here to get to formulatic worship. If you're a republic, if you're a monarchy, you'd want to get to a prescribed canon first and then head here as need arises. Your second path would be here to a Grand Theater and bookbinding. This is going to raise your maximum research by 25%. You'll want theological colleges as well. And then, as noted, the third path would be down here to scribe. And the 4th one would be to, down as just noted here, to the government traditions wonder. And as long as you're here, you may as well continue based on need, but oftentimes I almost always continue here for +4 loyalty of characters, and then perhaps I wait. Although these are generally nice to have, especially this 25% PI and loyalty of characters too. There's another one here in civics, so you go down here to this, and then the +4 loyalty of characters. A great wonder here, government traditions, +4 character loyalty, and then as long as we're on loyalty, this one, temporary office, is very nice to have, as it lowers the threshold of civil war by 5%. What exactly will this 5% do for us? So that it would add, it would offset the major power 5% malice. Presently we have 0% of the total power base disloyal. But as you proceed and your tyranny may or may not rise, various other things happen. I find that this 5% makes a huge difference relative to the frequency with which this civil war flag here will pop up here, and you have to deal with it. And not only do you receive the 5% here for threshold, this path, I'm going to tell you why you should take it as the 4th measure. Import value 5%, it gets you more money. It's not much, it's something. It's nice, but generally irrelevant. Build cost 2.5%, very nice. If you build stuff, I build a lot of it. I suggest you do too, mostly in cities. National commerce income 5%. You'll note here, we make a lot of commerce income, so that's going to juice 2/3 of our income. Monthly wages of characters. Wages is a fair expense, a 7.96. It's not inconsiderate or slight. So any bonus there is something. So 5% is better than none. Export value, this one is exceptionally nice, a 10% export value. You'll note here, if we go to our economy, most of this commerce income is going to be juiced by exports, which we already get a 20% bonus to. But anyway, 2/3 of our commerce income is generated by exports, generally speaking. Of course, there are some imports, not many, and not very large in magnitude. If we go here to exports, you'll note there's a great deal of money coming in here, 0.44, 0.53, 0.62, 0.35, etc., et al. Down the line. Whereas if you go to imports, they're not many, and they're not very lucrative either. So where was I? Export value 10%, all good there. River outpost is like another import route, never hurt anybody. And then the monthly wages of characters 10%. Again, there's 7.96%. So you make about what is that, 8 per with this 10%. It's something per month. So that would go from 26.32 to say like 27 or whatnot. You could proceed down this line. I never do. Don't. Okay, so let's get back to warring. So let's say we do war with these tribes here, generally speaking. We're going to end up with some aggressive expansion. not a lot. Our tyranny is, mid-range. It's not particularly high. But our tyranny relative to our, moderate aggressive expansion levels, it will come down. If you were more advanced in the technology tree, like had enacted temporary office or had enacted this government traditions wonder, let's go look at that right now. The government traditions wonder, and just scroll right down until you find it here. We would want to take a level 3, irrespective of whatever. You just choose buildings, gold, gold, gold down the line. You can tinker with it if you want to, I never do. But anyway, a level 3 government traditions wonder will give us provincial loyalty 0.07 tick up, irrespective of any of the pop happiness or otherwise. It's very potent, especially if you happen to have a lot of territories with no cities, sort of out in the bush, with a lot of tribals and or slaves that are not going to have nobles of your primary culture that will be happy, and you can move other unhappy pops into the cities with the nobles to offset their unhappiness. So nobles are going to keep your provinces with cities very happy. But if you're off in the bush, this provincial loyalty becomes exceptionally potent. Monthly corruption is also very potent. The higher your corruption, the more outlay you'll have for these wages that go out. It may look like a lot, these wages, but it's not. You can get a lot of corruption going on with your characters that can cost you a serious amount of money. I try to keep it as low as possible, and this helps immensely. And then loyalty of governors. The governors will not be disloyal, and it'll make your civil wars even less likely. Like here, for instance, this governor is fairly loyal, but that would be a +6 if I had that government traditions wonder in effect. So it would be 64, which would the governor loyalty is directly affects the provincial loyalty as well. So this Gorgos Gelid 0.01, maybe it would go up to 0.02. And then this corruption that the governor has with a negative 0.04 tick would probably not be there. Of course, the longer that I had this government traditions wonder working, the longer the tick would affect this fellow's corruption. There's a base of corruption, but this guy has none. So at some point, his corruption would come down to 0, which would mean that this provincial loyalty, 0.04 malice, you see there for government corruption, would disappear, which means that the provincial loyalty would move from 0.00, sort of static, to a positive tick due to his lack of corruption, and or potentially even more so here from the +6 loyalty. That could be 0.2. So it could change to 0.05 up just from that government wonder. Okay, so we've determined that it's not really our time as yet to go on a conquering rampage, because we don't have that government wonder. We don't have the +4 loyalty of characters here. We don't have the +2 loyalty of characters there. We don't even have the +2 loyalty of characters here. Meaning that we can't keep as high a tyranny as we would like, because our characters will become disloyal and could trigger a civil war. Speaking of civil wars, of course, we also don't have this one that I just mentioned. So we would want to wait until we have temporary office and this government traditions wonder built, not just sort of on the way, but built. At which point we can take off the gloves and run a 90+ tyranny and conquer multiple targets back to back to back when our aggressive expansion is high. The higher your aggressive expansion is, the less aggressive expansion you will take. Okay, so let's load up a save from year 608 in the Appears playthrough. It's part number 16, and we'll learn the truth of this matter. So let's repeat that. The more aggressive expansion you have, the less you will take. Let's go here, and we will skim down right here to aggressive expansion impact. There are various other things that factor in it. Some of them are more or less relevant, but this one, minus 71.36% aggressive expansion impact. So we are going to take 71% less aggressive expansion than we would otherwise take for claiming territory in a war. That combines with other factors that we have. If I open up the peace settlement and just sort of click on a button here, it'll give me the modifiers. If I were to peace out for just this territory right here, I would take 0 aggressive expansion. The question is why? Well, we get minus 10% for bellicose, minus 71% for our high aggressive expansion. That's minus 81%. Defending liberty technology, that's minus 91%, and then we have the blood of the Argid and divinity statute, which essentially throws us right over the top to where we take nothing. If I were to take all of this for a 46 war score, which I wouldn't want to, I would want to take everything, I would take a whopping total of 2 aggressive expansion. You'll note from the previous iteration, if you war in the beginning of the game, which we were just in the 400s, and had taken those 3 tribes out previously mentioned, which are about the same size as this, I'm sure we would have taken at least 30 or 40 aggressive expansion for our trouble. Here we take 2. Okay, so again, this is episode 16, and I'm going to use this to demonstrate the mechanics of warring and aggressive expansion, as well as optimal ways to cope with tribes and smaller combatants. You'll note that this peace agreement is such that we had to come in to this group through this small choke point, as it were, relative to our access. And then we had to take this first, and this Kaluria first, and this territory before we can access Topolia. That's that's the nature of the game. Here, because of our borders, we only bordered Moencesia and do not directly border Topolia. This fortuitous for me, Carthage just revolted, and we have a claim on them. In fact, we declared war already. What's going to happen if you want to watch episode 16, the first couple of minutes, 5 minutes or whatnot, it'll probably explain it as well, if not better than this, or add a bit of understanding perhaps to what I'm saying. We're going to be able to take all of this territory from Carthage, the revolt, without triggering Carthage because they're no longer affiliated. But more to the point, we're going to then border all of these territories here, Topolia, Kaluria, Aurivia, and we're going to be able to separate peace out with them without having to go through this choke point here of Moencesia. It's very important for separate piecing. And you'll find that the AI will arrange matters so that you have to go through these choke points quite often relative to what one might expect without the AI being probably programmed to arrange things in that manner. Is that my perception of just the way stuff happens, or is it the truth? I don't know, nor do I care, nor is it particularly relevant. What you want to do is make sure that you have access to the borders of any of these tribes that you want to trigger out. So if you'll note, in episode 16, we're going to piece out with this whole lot. We have an 85.68 aggressive expansion at present. I'm going to include a screenshot here of the post-war with our aggressive expansion relative to the date. You'll note here's September 27, 608. Here's a screenshot from roughly a year later, and we have conquered all of that territory. If you're, again, interested in how, just watch the opening portion of episode 16. You'll note that we have 2 more aggressive expansion than we did 1 year previous, but we've taken essentially this entire swath of land. And that's what I'm saying about aggressive expansion. The more you have, the less you will take. So what I want to do now, and I believe in episode 16, we're going to get a random pop-up stability event that's going to raise our stability. In fact, we already have received it high enough to where we can declare another war. So really, as we took only 2 aggressive expansion de facto, or in reality, practically speaking, here for taking this entire territory, what that tells me is that if I can declare another war and my loyalties are sufficient relative to my provincial loyalty, and my character loyalties are all good, there's no civil war, why not go and take more? Maybe I'll take another 2 aggressive expansion for taking, half of Rome out or whatnot, which I think is what I end up doing. And you just want to carry on with that for as long as is possible, and then at some point, you'll either want to take the militant Epicureanism, religious innovation, which lets you desecrate holy sites for 10 stability, or if you don't like that sort of flavor, sometimes I'll play a game where I just won't enact that because it makes the game more challenging. The militant Epicureanism, once you have a lot of temples and are really wide, you can essentially just carry on and slaughter the enemy to your heart's content without any regard whatsoever, and I mean any regard whatsoever for stability. But if you want to play without the militant Epicureanism, which I presently have not unearthed it yet, you would want to pay close attention to your stability and war for as long as possible, and then burn down your aggressive expansion while your stability comes back up. Okay, that was like the major crux of warring, but there are other minor details of warring which are pretty important, especially if you have never played a Paradox game or are very new to Imperator. This is probably going to be the same with most Paradox games. Like, let's say that I wanted to declare war on Rome directly. I would be able to because I have 3 claims on Rome. But and there would be no other combatants triggered, as this is a tribal vassal. He has 2 tribal vassals, and tribal vassals will not answer a call to arms. The hierarchy for who will answer and who will not answer can be found in the wiki. It's probably easier to visualize. It can be immediately assimilated, or just view the screen and osmosis will hit and you'll know, as opposed to me explaining it. If it were a client, if he had client states, they would come to arms. If he had feudatories, they would join him as well, but tribal vassals will not. What I'm getting at here is, let's say that I want to obliterate Rome. I'd get him off the board as he's a major pain. He's no longer a major pain, and I probably could have planned this better, and you could or may not, depending on your mood or view. I view as to when Rome goes as generally irrelevant, as I know that it will go, and I know that I can do it in 1 or 2 wars, or two or more wars. So, and I'm going to have to come up here, I know, to mop up a lot of these guys are going to be left. Like maybe I attack Seminonia, and maybe Seminonia triggers a 2 or 3 of these, and maybe I have a claim here. It maybe triggers some of these others to join in the defensive league. You'll note they have various affiliations. Seminonia has an ally in Cimbria, it would trigger him. Dumonia has an ally, Parisia, but a lot of them would have many affiliations. Like you'll note here, these are 3 or more affiliations, and they would all trigger for 1 claim. My point being is that's why I don't care about Rome, because I have not meticulously gone through and figured out how to trigger all of these guys at once, because I don't want to. And number one, if you did, the AI would probably do something, like it would migrate away or some war, or your claim would disappear. So I would recommend not getting too deep into the detail of being able to trigger all of them. Just throw some claims out there so you'll be able to trigger many of them, or most of them, and then have a mop-up detail at the end. And this is approaching the point where we're going to be able to do a world conquest. It's like in the bag at this point. Very easily done, as we're going to take the War of the Spear shortly. And if we unearth the War of the Spear, the Seleucid Empire will go. The former Mauryan Empire will go. Dravida will go. Anyone that is a major power here or higher, you can War of the Spear, which means essentially take them out irrespective of war score. So you note Armenia even doesn't really look like much, but it's still a major power. You can take Armenia, Egypt, Seleucids, anyone who's a major power, you can War the Spear very quickly and just get it done. So over here, do I care whether I take Rome out immediately, or there's a war where I have to come from mop-up detail? No. But if I wanted to take Rome out for whatever the reason, maybe it's you have a different situation, maybe you don't have the War of the Spear coming, maybe you want to get this area done so you can go over here and war without the War of the Spear, or for whatever the reason, there are ways to make Rome actionable 2 or 3 times. One such way is to file on his tribal vassals. You'll note here that Rome, that this Insubria is a tribal vassal of Rome. If I were to declare war on this, if I were to have a claim, first of all, which I would want to, I could declare war and trigger Rome. So what I would do, if I wanted to really get rid of Rome quickly, I would attack Rome with one of these normal claims, annex half of his country, and then attack Insubria with a claim. Of course, I would file one previously, and then you'll note I would trigger Rome again. The good news is that if that didn't work and he was still in existence, I would arrange it so that I could be adjacent to Turonia. Like, say, in the first war, when I attack Rome directly with this direct casus belli, I would arrange it so that I bordered Turonia, the other tribal vassal of Rome. I would file a claim immediately after the first war, and then I would attack Insubria, triggering Rome for a second war. By the time that second war was done, the claim might or might not hit in Turonia. If it had hit, I would immediately attack Turonia again for a third back-to-back war with Rome. There's another way, but you would have to you'd have to truce break, which is very bad. Like, we have a truce with Armenia, and if we were to break truce, we get minus 50 stability. Luckily, you can't go into negative, so that would just put us down at 0. We would get some war exhaustion and 25 aggressive expansion. Now, you'll note, when you have a really high aggressive expansion, you don't take any. But that does not count for this. So if you go on successive truce breaking runs, this can get really high, like 150, 175, if you were to truce break 3 or 4 times. Why would I truce break? Well, if I found myself in a situation where I wanted to get rid of a power, in this case it's Rome, but this power did not have these tribal vassals that I could arrange for it to become involved in second and third phase wars, then I would have to truce break and take those hits. And the only way to really attack with a back-to-back war or back-to-back-to-back-to-back wars is with a militant Epicureanism, because you can essentially truce break and then, raise a temple, or to actually raise 3 temples, get your stability back above 20. 20 does not work, 20.01 does work, so you'd have to raise 3 temples or desecrate 3 temples, like so. Just pick random 3. You can sort by religion. You wouldn't want to really theoretically desecrate your own. You take 1 and 2 and 3. I don't even have the technology, but theoretically these would give me, if I desecrated those 3 and my stability was at 0, it would pop back up to 30, which means I could immediately attack Rome or whomever the power might be again. I would get the 25 aggressive expansion, which would put me well over 100, 110 or thereabouts, but I would be in a second war. If I attacked again, I would end up with a 135 aggressive expansion, and I would have to desecrate 3 more holy sites. If you're pressed for time, which we're not, that could be a problem, or a solution to the problem for this matter. If you're not War of the Spearing, the only way to get through this massive blob of blue here, the Seleucid Empire, is to truce break. If I didn't have access to the War of the Spear, in this particular instance, 609, I would be heading to the Seleucid Empire immediately and starting concurrent wars, and then coming back here to mop up, and then attacking again The truth of the matter is I would probably attack and then truce break once and then head back here for let the AE burn down and then head here for some mop up and then go like 2 more or 3 more truce breaks, because there's a lot of war score here. This is more advanced warring for world conquest, but I figure as long as I'm here, that's I mean, why not include it? If you do have a war of the spear plan to do it, you would want to have a couple of different means by which to deal with it. Like here, you would want a very large cohort count in your capital territory, or you would want a great many other regions that you could extract legions from. I don't have a high count because I have not built theaters or gone out of my way to convert any pops in any cities outside of my capital region in this Epirus playthrough. So I have exactly 266 count. I only have 180 at present. Theoretically, you would want to have big, heavy-hitting armies here, as well as mercenaries. If you want to know how many mercenaries you can hire at max, they're right here under the mercenary tab. You'd want to max your number out before declaring a war, and then you can bribe the enemy's mercenaries in the middle of a war. You can attract quite a mercenary horde, if you will, if you just keep them on and have the money to carry on. We make quite a bit of money, so that seems to me as a plan. Anyway, effectively War of the Spearing, you'd want to have really big stacks. This is a bit much. He'll eat all of his food away very quickly. This is a more manageable number. This is a much more manageable number as well. You'd probably want to have recruit this unit as well. And this 41k strikes me as some fun. And then there's another 32,000 or 35,000 mercenary here. Those are the 5 I would hire. I would combine them with my legions here, the 3 armies I have at present, and set those guys in front, and followed up by a massive horde of horse archers that would essentially occupy one territory. Just send 1 horse archer to this territory. And if you're doing a war of the spear, the 1 archer or 1 unit will occupy it, and this will automatically become your territory. It's called the Imperial Challenge. It's well documented. It's in the wiki. There are a great many YouTube videos out detailing it. Here's an example of what I mean from part number 18 of the Epirus playthrough. We are presently involved in a war of the spear against the Seleucid Empire. These larger bruisers, this large army here, this larger army, this large army here, are essentially there to take care of any larger stacks, enemy stacks that we run across. So far, we've been fairly successful with that. We've beaten back most of the Seleucid big stacks. This unit is a problem. Of course, we're going to run into a hiccup every now and again. This unit here is going to have to force march over and deal with him, because if he gets into the meat of this these small horse archers that are sieging down like this unit has just a slight amount of time left to occupy Zelia. This is a war of the spears, you might know. So we'll let some time pass here, and we have just occupied something, but it's not here. Or anyway, there it is. I'm going to wait for this to trigger there. We'll go forward. Boom. So you'll note that this just turned to our territory, and this unit now can go on to the next. When those pop-ups happen, if you're doing a war of the spear, it'll happen again shortly. So you can click go to location, and you can just have the unit go to a new location. And then this one, you probably want to split in half. This one will send a forward as such. We'll go here as well. We'll take as much as we can, as quickly as we can, with safety in mind. This unit here has been in shattered retreat, as is this one. And we have this large unit here that can go and chase these units down, hopefully dispatch them. We have this one as well. Now that's what I mean by sending your larger units up forward and sending a horse archer horde behind them to occupy the land quickly. Also, this is what I'm referring to as mop-up. I did what I could. We ended up taking Rome completely out. Some of these powers or tribes were not affiliated with anyone we had claims on, nor do we really care, relative to our world conquest goal, that this is easily mop-upable. You can mop this up rather readily. You don't really even need a claim, as long as you have a sufficient number of holy sites, which we do. You can just attack this small power here without a casus belli, trigger his 2 buddies as well, and take them out in that manner. You'll lose some stability, you get a bit of aggressive expansion, and you won't be able to take much as relative to war score. Useful for taking out smaller combatants. It's in no casus belli works against small tribes like this. It will do nothing essentially against a larger power such as the Seleucid Empire. Maybe you might be able to take a Providence or something without a casus belli war, but it works exceptionally well for smaller tribes. I think that should do it for this segment on mostly warring and a bit into technologies that make warring more efficient or warring possible by increasing character loyalty, a threshold for civil wars, etc. Maybe we'll do a part 3 with various other matters that really don't come up all that often. I hope to